Welcome to AP US History. We're going to be looking at the Second Industrial Revolution, which takes place in the last half after the Civil War in the 19th century. We're going to be looking at labor movements, we're going to be looking at big business, looking at inventions that catapulted the United States into the leading industrial power in the world. This period is after the Civil War, and it will go to about 1900. Um, some ideas that we need to kind of keep track of as we look at this industrialization of America. Uh, there's some ideas that kind of sum up where America was at. By 1900, we were exceeding the combined output of Germany and Great Britain, although they had a tremendous jump on us. By 1880, 50% of Americans worked in agriculture. By 1900, only 25. So people are making a move to the factory, living in cities. The government had an attitude of laissez-faire, which is a French term that means hands-off business, no regulation. There certainly was class division, and it became more pronounced as America industrialized. This shows the iron and steel production from 1875 to 1915, and America will lead the way in the production of steel. One of the, or some of the causes for this industrial revolution, certainly the steam revolution that comes along. Railroads are going to make it possible to move huge quantities of raw materials and finished materials throughout the United States and then onto ships to other parts of the world. First big business in the U.S., a magnet for financial investment. Uh, Railroads are going to be key, big business to opening up the West. Um, and all these things together is going to put America on top. So railroads were a tremendous part of this industrial growth. There were certainly technological inventions. The Bessemer process, which makes steel. Refrigerated cars enabled companies to slaughter huge amounts of beef and then freeze it and ship it to different parts of the United States. Edison is going to come up with quite a number of inventions that's going to revolutionize entertainment and also communication. Often called the Wizard of Milo Park, comes up with a light bulb, motion pictures, the phonograph, and many other inventions. Uh, Part of this industrial revolution was uh, fueled by what we call the Protestant or the Puritan work ethic. That is, you needed to work hard. This was God's will. Horatio Alger produced over 100 novels selling America on the idea that you could go from rags to riches if you just worked hard enough, becoming a self-made man. This shows a picture of Edison in his laboratory. Thousands and thousands of inventions were created because it was profitable. This shows a picture of the first light bulb and a stamp and a U.S. stamp commemorating that. The phonograph was invented in 1877, and you could capture sound and then record it and play it back later. And people enjoyed listening to phonographs. The dictaphone aided in business. You could talk into the dictaphone, and then a person could transcribe that onto paper and mail it or copy it in some way. The motion picture camera is invented. Silent pictures are going to be the rave. Alexander Bell is going to come up with the first telephone in 1876, and this is going to increase communication, speed of communication. Alternating current is going to be created by George Westinghouse, which is going to make it more feasible for electric motors, uh, and smaller appliances are going to feed off of that. Certainly, the Wright brothers coming up with the first flight in 1903 in Kitty Hawk. Uh, Henry Ford is going to make it possible to mass produce automobiles through his assembly line and make it affordable for average folks to buy cars. He paid his huge wages for the time to his workers because he wanted them to be able to afford to buy his cars. Um, Now, let's turn our attention to the Transcontinental Railroad. We know during the Civil War period in 1862, the Pacific Railroad Way Act was passed. Uh, it intended to link the North to the West. Uh, Eventually, there will be four transcontinental railroads, but the first is going to connect the Pacific states with the rest of the Republic. Now, one of the reasons that this transcontinental railroad was able to be created is that Congress guaranteed loans and also granted land to railroad companies uh, to build track to connect the East to the West. Without the American government subsidizing the railroads with land and then also guaranteeing the huge expense of building the railroad, it would have been delayed for many years. There was something called the Credit Mobilier. This was a situation where fraud was committed. The railroad company pocketed $23 million. Some of the congressmen were involved in this. It was a huge scandal at the time, but this is part of doing big business during this time. The Union Pacific laid track from Omaha, Nebraska to Utah. They used mostly Irish immigrants. They did practice unethical business uh, standards. The Credit Mobilier was accredited to them. Um, they built over 1,000 miles of track. Uh, most of their land, most of the land that they built over was somewhat flat until they got to the Rocky Mountains. The Central Pacific started from California and it will meet up in Utah and the two will connect. Leland Ford also founding Stanford University and the Big Four, Crocker, Hopkins, and Huntington, will be the financiers who put the money up and build from Sacramento to Utah. They laid track, about 700 miles of track. They used 10,000 Chinese laborers called coolies. Um, Now, those it will take some years for this to be completed, but when it is completed, it makes it possible to go from the East Coast to the West Coast in a matter of weeks, um, and also haul heavy equipment to the mining interest in the Rocky Mountains and other places. There are other transcontinental railroads. The Great Northern was laid from Duluth, Minnesota to Seattle by James G. Hill. This is all his money putting it up and building the railroad. The Southern Pacific is going to be a track laid from New Orleans to Los Angeles and then San Francisco, which is in still business today. They were railroad moguls. These were the huge men who had huge amounts of wealth, made lots of money, millions of dollars, building and operating railroads. Cornelius Vanderbilt actually didn't build too much railroad, but he consolidated and bought up smaller railroads and made about $100 million. Jay Gould and Russell Sage controlled most of the railroads in the West. Um, Cornelius Vanderbilt was a ruthless financier, businessman. He would do anything to acquire more wealth and more power and more railroads. Eventually, because of the unethical business practices of the railroads, there will eventually be some controls placed on big business by the government, the federal government. The public be damned. What do I care about the law? Ain't I got the power? And he certainly did exercise his power. The significance of railroads, it spurred on the Industrial Revolution in America, made a lot of things possible that wouldn't have been otherwise without them. It connected the East to the West, helped settle the West, provided a lot of jobs for new immigrants coming into America, helped displace the Native Americans and place them on in concentration or reservation to get them out of the way of the white settlers. Opened up outlets for farm goods to the world, and certainly opened up the mining industry because you could ship heavy equipment to the mines on the railroads. Now, the rise of corporations in America, there were a number of trusts or huge monopolies, and they were destructive to competition. There were primarily two kinds of mergers that were being created during this time. One were vertical mergers. This is where one company controlled every aspect of production. Andrew Carnegie and his steel production would have been a vertical merger. He controlled railroads, he controlled the mines, he controlled the steel plants, he controlled distribution and sale of the steel. Horizontal mergers were consolidation of one kind of industry. Rockefeller, Standard Oil, that is, he at one time owned 90% of all the refineries in America producing kerosene and other petroleum products. And eventually, these mega trusts, these mega monopolies will be dismantled. They'll be broken up. This shows the type of businesses that were being created on this chart. This shows the sale of certain kinds of goods and transportation, the processing. You can see that America was on its way to becoming a huge, the number one, the superpower in terms of industrial might. And it shows the number of corporations that merged into bigger companies. And you can see that towards the latter part of the 20th century or 19th century, this was true. This shows a cartoon of Standard Oil and it depicts Rockefeller's company as swallowing and controlling people. It controlled the government, and it controlled other businesses and forced them out. There seemed like there was nothing that could stop it. Robber barons were the folks who owned these mega corporations, these huge monopolies, and they were able to control not only the production of certain items, but also competition, and also certainly the labor market. And we'll stop right there, and we'll pick this up